Marco,
Sean,
I'm gonna twist your arm until you give in.
give it a go.
I'm gonna give it a go. See if I'm successful. No, I think I've been to HIMSS. I think you need to experience what it is.
Well, like I said in the prior conversation about the coverage, I will try my best to go there. Until then, we're doing some pre event conversations, and those are really cool as well. So if then I go there, you'll see me.
All right, all right. But I'm thrilled for this conversation. I don't want to lead it to the other one yet. Um, One of the things when we spoke to Ali on the kickoff episode, I noted that I I really appreciate that HIMSS, which is a healthcare tech uh, driven event, has a whole area dedicated to cybersecurity, and and not just tracks, but they actually do research as well. And we have Lee Kim on from HIMSS. Lee, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for joining us. And Lee is presenting a cybersecurity trends report during the event, and we're going to touch on some of the highlights here and some of the trends that she and the team think will impact healthcare and technology and ultimately patient care and the health of society. So appreciate you joining us, Lee, and excited to learn more about what you work on. And actually, let's start there. Your role at HIMSS and some of the things you do.
Well, I am Senior Principal of Cybersecurity and Privacy at HIMSS, the Healthcare Information Management Systems Society. I've been in this role since 2013, and so it's been a while. My role essentially is external facing, anything that relates to coverage as it relates to healthcare privacy and cyber matters, nowadays a bit of AI and things like that. I essentially cover, I don't do essentially the hands-on technical stuff, although I do liaise with our IT and security teams here at HIMSS. That's not necessarily central. The member facing component, though, is someone who's an SME on the content side, though, is more my focus.
Very cool. So in this report, I was going through it and I see about everything from AI to zero trust to ransomware, geopolitical cyber warfare. So, what if you had to pick a few of the most relevant at this particular time? Would you put them all at the same level, or maybe you do have some that are worrying you a little bit more, or that you want the people that participate to know about it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that as it relates to artificial intelligence, I'm just very surprised that over a year out of ChatGPTs and other things being released into the world, a lot of healthcare organizations don't have policies or really a really good governance structure around AI. It's kind of like the wild, wild west. Um, and that of course is a bit antithetical to keeping information private and keeping information secure, especially in the day and age of large language models that can run amok. The concerns about data leaks and other misuses of information, and frankly, if this information is also used by doctors, nurses, or others, if there's blind trust, as with any kind of new technology, how do you know that the analysis and the result is actually correct? And bam, there's someone's life, in one's hands, and it's only as good as the data and the analysis, especially if someone relies on those results.
Yeah, it's interesting that I mean you can't get away from the AI being part of the conversation, which is good, as long as we talk about it in whole, including the risk, not just the opportunity. But I want to touch on maybe some of the things you see as potentials, game changers for AI, where when it respects privacy and when it respects security of the systems that it's connected to and the information that it is connected to. Are you seeing hardware, software, automation? What are you seeing that's you think could really open up better care for patients?
Well, I think that it's everything from in the operating room, you've got HVACs that are obviously computerized, that are computer controlled. And so from that respect, in terms of ensuring that operating rooms are of a safe and reasonable environment in that way is set by industrial controls. That's certainly a major thing. Patient transport, smart elevators, other things that can certainly improve speed and speed of transport in terms of patients. But I think that I would be amiss if I didn't say that radiologists have essentially been at the forefront of AI adoption for quite a while, and the fact that with artificial intelligence, you see, the artificial intelligence, a computer, isn't, of course, limited by what one can physically see with their own eyes, which is to some extent it could be inaccurate. But if you look at a radiology image from an analytical perspective, you could certainly, quote unquote, program an AI agent, let's say, to look at a radiology image and look at a person's heart. And it might, for example, depict certain voxels being lit up. And it may say, oh, this patient is going to have a pretty bad myocardial infarction. You need to intervene here. You need to put this patient on a path to try to avoid this kind of catastrophe. I think that's amazing. The point is, as you eloquently put that, Sean, the fact that AI can extend our senses and our ability to judge and discern when it's trained properly and when it's programmed appropriately to analyze and such. I think that's a wonderful thing. I mean, in our lifetimes, I'm pretty sure that healthcare outcomes will improve thanks to essentially automation and what we now understand to be AI.
Well, if there is one industry, let's call it industry, or a segment of society that could benefit a lot from technology, has been benefiting a lot from technology, is definitely the healthcare. But there's always that double-edged sword, right? AI, it's one of those things, but also, the use of robotics in the operating room and virtual reality, augmented reality. So on one side, you want to bring as much technology because it could help us save life. On the other one, maybe you want to apply a zero trust model, but if there is an area where it's really conflicting, I feel like it's in the healthcare. I love your opinion on this and how this came out maybe throughout the report. This conflict of innovate, but hold on.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, we have to move forwards in terms of what we're able to do. Let's look at the state of the healthcare industry, for example. Whether you're dealing with cybersecurity teams that lack hands on deck, or even just generally staffing within healthcare organizations, smaller hospitals in the countryside or smaller cities or community hospitals, or hospitals that are in countries where perhaps they don't have such large budgets, or perhaps where they don't have as many resources as we do. That's a reality. But we still need to move forwards in terms of what we can do in terms of technology. And so there is that. I mean, we have to keep moving forwards. The point, though, is that to what extent do we allow any kind of technology, including AI, to just simply walk on its own, imagine a toddler walking on its own, no guardrails? That's kind of a disaster. So why are we letting something that is automated walk on its own without guardrails within many of our healthcare organizations? I do think that lack of human intervention and that lack of judgment in terms of the various processes and tasks that AI may be tasked with. The lack of supervision to me is sort of troubling, and I feel like, just like in terms of just any good parent and a child that's learning to walk, we need to guide it at least somewhat for a while.
So, having built many products, there's always a triangle of time, money, and resources, and
Yes.
you get to pick two, right? And then the third one's usually stable, or I forget how you look at it. But I guess the point is, when it comes down to making decisions, making trade-offs, looking at the risk, um, because in the report it speaks to kind of money matters, but if you don't allocate enough money for all the areas, only for development, not necessarily risk management, you kind of miss the mark there. So I'm wondering, did you uncover anything that kind of speaks to how money is allocated and how budgets are defined? Obviously, there's never enough money, there's never enough time, we never enough people, but from a budgetary perspective, what do those conversations look like? And anything from the report that you can highlight to kind of give us hope, perhaps?
Absolutely. In terms of budgets and what people are spending on, I think that there's a tendency, and we've seen the stats bear this out, there's a tendency to spend on tools. And I think that that's built out of the tradition of security primarily being seen as this thing involving technology and computers. So fix it with money, fix it with the latest tools, et cetera, et cetera. But we've seen cybersecurity tools diversify and specialize. A lot of startup companies that are claiming to be this newfangled thing, thanks to AI, to be faster, better, stronger, and yet it's so expensive. So there needs to be a limit on that, because I feel like even though we do need adequate money, that's true of anything in life, I think that the bottom line is we need to also understand whether we're being wasteful in terms of spending, whether security solutions are duplicative or conflicting or not. And what's more, in terms of the environment as well, I could say, even if you're an academic medical center where academic freedom is definitely respected, and that's a wonderful thing, you still need guardrails around things, because things like even relevant to students' personal data under FERPA or otherwise, you need to make sure that certain things about whether it's academic performance or student health or otherwise is very much safeguarded. There needs to be a kind of balancing act, if you will, between innovation and progress and respecting the privacy and security of the data. I think also in terms of cybersecurity budgets, what we're seeing is if the emphasis isn't on tools, it's also a bit in terms of staff, but less than 50%, I believe, of budgets are being used towards governance and policies and things like that. And if you aren't organized, you can imagine what it's like to run an unorganized cyber program. That's not really cool.
It's not cool at all. No. So it makes me think, I kind of mentioned at the beginning, like the zero trust model, but you need to let technology in. So when you look at least for me, if I think of the healthcare, we know that now being proactive is better than reactive when you take care of your health. I feel like obviously it's the same thing for cybersecurity. Would it help, in your opinion, or to actually optimize the budget if instead of a reactive approach, you have a proactive approach?
Oh, absolutely. I think that that's foundational. You just like an analogy is cleaning out one's closet. You got to understand what you have, what's duplicative, what's junk, what's old and doesn't need to be supported anymore. And I could say that this is likely more done in, let's say, countries or situations in which the budget isn't so much. My counterparts in Europe, for example, they tend to have sometimes as little as 1/5 of what we have in the US in terms of a cybersecurity budget or overall IT budget. There may not necessarily be a dedicated personnel like a CIO or a CISO or that kind of structure, but still they make do with what they have. They make do with things like open source tools and technology where you can leverage things that are free. And also, unfortunately, we don't have this here, but the European Commission just set out guidance on January 15th of 2025, saying that we'll have a network of chief information security officers and we'll have resources available for you to help guide you in terms of better security and everything else, because essentially throwing money at the problem will not get you necessarily more secure. And what we saw from the report is time and time again, just like year in, year out, we see with the headlines, social engineering and in particular phishing is king in terms of being able to get in. So even though we might use tools to some success to mitigate the impact of someone clicking on a poison link or opening up a poisoned attachment, it's still a balanced equation in that you also need to ensure that your staff is clicking less instead of clicking on everything and not necessarily responding to everything under the sun, even though culturally within healthcare, we're prone to say yes, or we're more prone to help people because that's essentially our mission. We're essentially charged with taking care of people.
I'm gonna throw a big question out here. We'll see where it goes. It's been something that's on my mind. It's really coalescing in my mind at the moment. Resilience has been a topic a lot in the last 12 months, at least for me, in my show. Are we in a position where we're becoming reliant upon a technology that's going to be tapped into a ton of automation, a ton of services we provide, a ton of interaction between partners and patients and whatnot, where if those services go offline, and or if those services, this is the more interesting point for me from my perspective, if those services get really expensive to use, and now we're forced to, I mean, if we build on top of Windows or if we build on top of Linux, we're kind of safe in that respect, right? And there's Kubernetes to kind of shield us from the underlying infrastructure. I'm just wondering if we're going to end up in a place where organizations, particularly healthcare organizations, are building AI into things, and the resilience becomes a question because we can't swap it, and we can't afford it, and or it goes down. I don't know. It's a big question. Your thoughts on that, though?
Yeah, I gotcha. I think that we saw that in the past year with certain disruptions that really took us down in terms of people being able to fill prescriptions or even just generate money within their hospitals in terms of being paid for claims. But notwithstanding that, the answer is yes. The solution to that is simply, number one, very few organizations, even though they should, very few organizations do a business impact analysis, and they don't have on retainer, for example, a backup service or something as a mainline service like that. They should. How many of us within hospitals that are working with our quote unquote buyers or purchasing departments say, okay, it's good that we have this vendor in, but can we have this other vendor as a backup? And or if they were to go bankrupt or go out of business or whatever, who's the other entity we work with? And what's more, in terms of our hoarding legacy technology, what are we going to do in terms of the moment that we procure a product or a service? Are we thinking already about the timeline for that product or service and the replacement? Do we have that at the ready? So these are some things that we need to think about. And I think that the other thing that I'd like to say I find is kind of eroding, and I think that you're touching upon this, Sean, is that with computers, no matter what it is, it could be AI, it could be just something that we view as, of course it works. It's just like turning on my water faucet in the kitchen, hypothetically. Basically, we always assume we'll have electricity, we'll always assume we have water, we'll always assume that vendor X will always be up. But it's computers, it's technology, all these things can change with the physical disaster, with the unexpected man-made fill in the blank. All kinds of things can happen to upset the apple cart. And what I don't see organizations drilling enough on, and one thing that we touch upon in the report as well, is tabletop exercises to test your incident response. I can't tell you how valuable it is to just simply have a little bit of fun, draft a scenario or two or several, and see how staff react, see how they react to situation X, Y, or Z. Get your vendor in there, that critical mainline vendor, and see how the communications go with them. Are they competent? Are they doing a good job? Do you need to fine tune something? You might as well figure that out while you're still kind of pontificating about it and it's still in the land of fiction as opposed to fact, when you don't want that to be the first time you test your plan, essentially, is what I mean to say. So I think that's true, whether we're dealing with a vendor or AI or anything else. We have to understand that all these things are fungible, fragile, and nothing, unfortunately, is going to be 100% reliable or permanent.
That's fantastic.
That's
I love that.
Yeah. Make me think, like you almost need, like, you have a generator if there is a storm or something and there's a blackout. You almost need another hospital, like a twin, so that one goes down, you have another one, but then you're really talking about budget, right? But definitely, like, I agree with you. If you create this tabletop and create scenarios and you see how people react, of course you can mitigate. You can prevent if you can, and then you can mitigate if something really does happen, which I think is key as well, instead of scrambling at that point.
Absolutely. And Marco, I think that you touched on something very important, which is something that I've tried to at least say, sometimes year in, year out, but I sure hope that someone who has the power to effectuate change will do that. And that is, as you know, we have mutual aid, right? In your community, maybe the ambulances that whiz by, maybe they say so-and-so mutual aid. So we have that kind of system set up physically to help each other when things happen. But in terms of that cyber incident, could we also have cyber mutual aid that way with cyber colleagues at nearby hospitals or even companies that are there that maybe they know a thing or two about cyber and they could help us out? What's to stop us other than maybe a contract and an obligation or two?
I like that.
Yeah. I think we've heard of stories of, I think it was LA City had a security program that was available to the broader community.
The lab. That was
a
few years ago. I don't know what happened.
But I mean, it's a great idea, and and I think it'd be great to see it implemented properly. So Lee, as we wrap up here, HIMSS is next week, 3rd through the 6th, and next week, it's this week if you're listening this through the 3rd through the 6th, but it's in Las Vegas, and you have the opportunity to share more details from the report in at least a few settings there. Can you maybe give some folks an idea of where they can find you at the conference if they have more questions and want to partake in what you're presenting and chatting with other members about?
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing Monday, I'll be at the Global Leaders Exchange, and we'll be talking about all things cybersecurity. There will be cyber leaders, IT leaders from literally all over the world. At the HIMSS conference, for those of you that haven't been there yet, we have attendees from hundreds of countries all over the world, all kinds of different health systems. Sometimes they're government run, sometimes they're private, but it's all good because, again, we're in the business of helping each other, and we all help each other figure this out with common challenges. Our thing happens to be technology and also information, but that's essentially where it's at. We also have an all-day cybersecurity forum, which is an optional pre-conference forum, but it's all dedicated to cyber to help educate and network with our peers. On the exhibit floor, we have the Cybersecurity Command Center with all kinds of exhibits and booth spaces. But really, it really is a wonderful confluence of pretty much everyone in industry that will be there. 30,000, sometimes 40,000 of your colleagues and best friends. So it truly is a wonderful dynamic of people that you may never meet in life. Suddenly they're all there, and all the information and knowledge is there. And they always say knowledge is power. I have to say the fact that people are nice and willing to help each other and even challenge each other in terms of things and even opposite ideas, I think is a wonderful, empowering thing.
Couldn't say that myself better. So it's a great way to end this. That was beautiful.
It was.
I agree.
And yeah, so HIMSS Global Conference in Las Vegas, 3rd through the 6th. I encourage everybody to attend. I believe there's some virtual stuff as well. Of course, the report is available online. We can include a link to that so people can have a gander at that before they meet Lee in person in Las Vegas for the conference.
Yes.
Security is important. We know that if you're in the security space, I love that. I'll say it again. I love that HIMSS has cybersecurity as part of the health tech world. Bring that conversation directly to the heart of all the innovation and everything that's driving better patient care. So I applaud you all for that. And Lee, thank you very much for joining us today, and wish you a great week.
Hey, thank you very much. And for that survey, it could be accessed at www.himss.org/cybersurvey. Totally one word. So anyone can download it and everything. There's no salesperson will call you. So
There's no lead gen gate. I can confirm that. And yep, so definitely take a look at that. And everybody listening, watching, thank you for joining us here on location with Sean Martin, Marco Ciappelli. More coming from HIMSS and, of course, other conferences throughout the world. We appreciate you staying with us. Please do subscribe and share with your friends, and we'll see you at the next location.